Hi everybody, this is Rick Lyles, part 3 of 3, creating a research survey with Google Forms. You created a Google account so you could use Google Forms, and we've learned how to create a survey in Google Forms and send it out. At least one way to do it. There's several, I'm sure, but we figured out one way. And today what we're going to do is look at the results that you got back on your survey, and then how to export that data, analyze it, and then also how to build some charts and graphs associated with it. We've got a lot to do, so let's get started. All right, this is an old hat to you here, getting signed in to your Google account, but just in case, we'll go through it. Now, I want to caution you, if you're using a school or work email, be sure that's the one that you're working under, because you're going to need the Google Drive associated with that one. So be sure you got the right email address right there. And we're going to get logged in here. And what we want to do is, it went straight to my Google Drive. But in case you've kind of forgotten how to get there, let's open a new tab. Let's go to our menu over here. We're going to go to Google Drive. And your document should be stored, if you remember, you stored it, your document, your form, in your survey. Now, my real one is outside of here. Yours would be there, and you would just open it. And I'm going to open mine up. Double click it. And yours may show up there also. Here we go. It's opening up. Now, what happened to me was I sent all those emails out, and I wasn't getting any emails back, and I thought, oh my goodness, nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I'm going to eat some worms. But then I, for some reason, opened up my form, and I should have known this, but and I started seeing there were responses already there. It did not send me an email. Now you could fix it to where it would do it that way, but so my responses started showing up, and I ended up with 12 responses. I don't know how many you'll have, hopefully more than that, but that was all I needed. So anyway, to check to see if people are sending those back, you're going to need to open that form, very likely. So here we've got our question still. It's in edit mode. You could go in there and edit it, but it only changes it for people who would do it later, not the people that have already done it. So don't think you, now that's a long story. I'm not going to go into that, but just don't be changing it is my point after people have been turning it in, because it kind of messes things up. There's the questions. Let's look at the responses. I'm going to left click right there. Now I changed this because I had some people kind of coming in late wanting to turn that in, and I was already started using my data, so I had to turn it off. There'll be a button right there, so leave that on as long as you're accepting responses, and then you can click this and it'll stop accepting them at that point. So here's my results of my survey, and Google Forms is kind of cool in that it shows you the number of responses and then the percentage associated with each answer. Gives you the answer out there. Same thing here. Let's go to one of those Likert scales and see what we have here. There's a yes, no. Let's see, where is one? Here. When it does one of those linear, I didn't do a drop down in mine, but when it does one of those linears, then it creates a graph scale. And the cool thing about this also, if you struggle with making your own graphs and charts, if you could write the question properly, mean to make you dizzy there. If you could write your question properly, you could use these in your write-up. Right up here is a little, it says copy chart, this little emblem right there, or icon, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to left click that, and I copied it. Now, I'm going to show you, I'm going to open up a Word document, a blank Word document, and I'm going to right click now and paste it. And there it is. It's in that document. And you're like, that's not exactly the size I wanted. You can resize it by getting on these little anchor points here. Or if you say, I really don't want this part showing up, you could right click it, and where is it? Right here, crop. And you can take that information out. I want to leave that. I like things kind of square, but not exactly square. I'm going to click outside that area, left click, and there. It's there. But you can't move it around, and this is not a video about using Word, but I will show you this one thing, like right here on layout options. Left click there. If you click one of these down here about text wrap, then when you type your text, now is the time for, time, whatever. Okay, then you can move it around. All right. So it's this little button right there. Otherwise, it'll just be stuck there like it's a word, okay? Anyway, so you can do that with all of those graphs and charts in your Google form. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Nice colors. And also, you can attach it to your survey, and to do that, you would need to print it right here. I'm going to show you this because it's an important step if you want to do this. Print, and let's see. I said I was going to print it. I guess I'll try it right here. Print. I right-clicked. I'm going to print. And if you'll save it as a PDF, then you can attach it. That's a whole nother video right there, but I will show you that for those of you who know how to go about it. So here's my survey again. Now what I told you we're going to do is look at the responses, which we did, and you can go question by question and look at responses, or you can look at each individual person and all of that individual's responses. Now if you had been collecting their emails, you would know who, but we didn't go about it that way. So I'm going to go back to the summary. So what you want to do is, or what I did, and you can do it also, you can export this to a spreadsheet. And the length of these questions don't really lend itself to that, but it's very helpful anyway. You can send it straight to a Google Sheet. If you left click that one, it's probably going to bring up, do you want a new sheet or add it to an existing one, and it'll put it in a Google Sheet. Or if you don't like messing around with Google products, this is Google's version of Excel, by the way, Google Sheets. You can left click the ellipsis there and download it as a CSV. Either way is fine. This turns out to be an Excel sheet. I'm not going to do it that way, and I'll show you why. Because when I left click this and export this data, there, it brings it up. So it brings up all my data, and if you'll remember, my first question was, please indicate your gender. There it is, male, female, male, female. Please indicate your path to teacher certification. And there's the answer they selected. What age range were you? Just like that. It follows exactly the survey. It just transferred that information into this data. And why would you want to do it that way? Well, to me it was easier because now I'm going to create, or I did create, an Excel sheet. This allowed me to start coding this data and then sorting it. And what I ended up with was, so I just redid this is a manual touch. If you were really good at setting this data up, this survey, you could probably just modify this some and sort it and all that sort of thing. And again, that's too lengthy to get into, but I will tell you a little bit about it. But what I did was, and I'm going to put this over on one side of my screen here. That one, what I did was, I like working with Excel. I like the charts and graphs in there. Sheets has very similar charts and graphs, but I prefer Excel when I'm going to put mine together. What I did, I'm going to try to put this on the other side of the screen. There we go. Or I had it for a minute. There we go. So what I did was I went in here and coded this and gave it a title, a heading. This is important for how your chart or graph turns out, this heading. So instead of writing the answer out, I just made the heading, and it doesn't have to be bold because the chart or graph doesn't really care. And then I coded this F and M. Now, had I made it that way in the survey, it would have showed up that way, right? And then the type of certification, I gave it a code. Let's see, alternative certification private. If you'll look, that's not what the first one was. It's post-baccalaureate, but I named it alternative certification private. But I put those in there and then I sorted it, and that's why it came out this way. So it makes my makes my graph and chart work better because I was able to sort it, and you could see all of the traditional education programs together and the alternative private, then the alternative university. So there's some manual work there, but again, this is not a video about using Excel, maybe another time. And then let's see, let's go over a little bit. Then the date range, I coded it. And anyway, so I made this sheet up, and that's going to be you deciding how am I going to title my columns, how am I going to code my data, and then you'll explain it in your study. Well, I promised to show you how to do charts and graphs, so that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to maximize my Excel sheet here. Now remember, this data was exported from, this data right here was exported from your survey, and then I just took this data and made my own spreadsheet. Hope that part's clear, right? This did not come from the export. I made this up by hand. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to do two different types of charts. We're going to do a bar graph, and then we're going to do a scatter dot or a dot scatter. I'm never real clear on what that is. So let's do a graph, and what I want to show everybody is how many. I'm going to select this on gender up here. I'm going to left click and drag. And so I've selected that column, right? Now, you could do shift here, but I'm going to use control. I want to know, all right, how many males and females. I want to show the males and females. I'm going to left click. I'm going to hold down control and then left click and drag. Very important that you use control. And I want to see about how many males and females and what type of certification program and how much student teaching they have. This is a non-contiguous column, so you're going to have to hold down control. I'm holding down control, left click, and drag. Now I'm going to put these three columns into a chart. So I'll come up here to insert, recommended charts and graphs, and it sends these out here to me. And the one I want to use is just a simple bar chart. It calls it clustered column. I would call it just a bar chart, but clustered column. Okay, that looks good to me. And I'm going to say OK. And it put a title in there, time student teaching. Time student teaching. That's okay. It took it out of that. That's acceptable to me. But it doesn't tell over here anything, but we can tell these numbers represent, you know, reflects a time period, time. And then down here, I made a key for mine in my study, and I told what ACP was and F was. Of course, pretty obvious, male and female. But I told what those were, and I just made a box down below it in my study to explain what those were, just a little key. So that chart looks okay. I prefer to dress it up a little bit, so I clicked over here. I'm going to click on the chart. I just selected it, all right? Don't select this, select over here. So you select the whole chart, and right here on style, I like something a little different, like that, for instance. So I just clicked on that style and it applied it. So you see I've got my time and my what type of certification, whether they're male or female. I'm going to move this over here out of the way. Later, when you're working in Word, you can right-click this and copy it. Well, I'll just show you right now. You can right-click that chart, copy it, and I'll open that blank document over here. And you can right-click and paste any of those work, and there it is. It's in your Word document. All right, and I'm sure you could insert it from Word. We're not going to go that route though. Okay, now what I want to know, I'm going to have a dependent and an independent variable on my quantitative study, right? And so the independent one has to be the x-axis, and the dependent one has to be the y-axis. So what my independent variable was time spent student teaching. So I'm going to left click here and select that row. And I wanted to know what impact it might have on current teacher self-efficacy. So again, we don't have contiguous the word is contiguous. I think adjacent would work also. So we don't have adjacent columns, so I'm going to have to hold down the control key with one hand, and then I'm going to left click and drag here, and this is going to make up my chart. And Excel's pretty intuitive. I'm going to insert recommended charts and graphs, and look, the first one it brings up is a scatter dot one. That's okay with me. I like that. I like that one white that way. It's just I like that representation. See, I clicked on the wrong thing and moved it. I'm going to undo that. And if you want to move the chart, you have to click somewhere where you're not selecting some of the parts of the chart. So yeah, all right. So it named it current teacher self-efficacy. All right. So let's we want to label these axes, okay? So people know, what does that represent? What does this represent? So I'm going to come over here and chart elements, and I want to axis titles. Now, what did I say my independent variable was? This is time. What did I label over there? I'm going to call it the same thing as my column. Time student. Not a very good title, but that's what I'm going to put in there. Time student teaching. And over here, this one's a little tricky because the text is running vertically. But you can do delete or backspace, take that out. And this over here was what? My dependent variable is teacher self. There we go. So you can do the same thing with that one. Once you get your chart the way you want it, I'm going to right click it up there. I didn't click on that. I clicked on the whole chart, and I'm going to copy it, go back to my Word document, and I'm going to show y'all, right click and paste it, and there it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now with these charts here, I'm just going to leave them right here, and if you decide to change it, sometimes you may need to change it, and sometimes some changes you make here will show up in your Word document. But again, that's another story for another day. I'm going to go back to my survey, look at it just a second as I close out here. So what we did was we looked at our responses. People responded, which was good. I like that. And then we copied one of the charts out of here and pasted it in a Word document. Then remember to export this, you look at the responses, and you can do it into a Google Sheet. That's what this represents. Or if you're pretty set on Excel, you can just download it into an Excel spreadsheet and work with it there. Again, once you're done taking responses, stop that one. And I pretty well about run out of bullets here. Hope y'all get something out of this. Good luck on your papers.